The Tata Nexon may have only come out in 2017, but since then, it's created quite a bit of stir. It was the first compact crossover for Tata, it was the first sub-4-metre crossover to wear a coupe SUV styling, and it was also the first Indian car to win a 5-star global NCAP rating. And now it's adding another feather to the hat by being the first compact crossover to go electric. This right here is the Nexon EV. It's not a concept or any kind of a technology study. This is a production-ready car, and we are driving it today. The design you see here looks edgy, robust, and way more aggressive than the Nexon we have seen so far. And the EV lends this design to its IC engine counterpart as well. The teal green color seen here is exclusive to the EV and looks stunning in the real world. I don't really like the gloss black appliques at the front and the rear all that much. While they look good on a shiny new car, they are dust magnets and prone to getting scratched quite easily. What I do like are the blue accents. I was worried that they might look a little tacky in the real world, but not so much. The detailing around the car with the arrow tail design looks quite nice too. I even like the shape of the headlamps and the new DRLs which turn into blinkers. I would have liked LED headlamps though, and they would have been more energy efficient too. Overall, the silhouette of the EV is similar to the outgoing Nexon, but the angular profile is likely to age better than the bulbous appearance of the outgoing car. The cabin of the Nexon EV is a slight bit of a departure over the outgoing Nexon. You will see a lot of piano black plastics in here to go with its new age theme. I am not a big fan of it, however. If you can see closely, there are a lot of scratches on all the common touch points, and that's something that makes the cabin look a lot older than what it is. So I would have liked more material options, or at least more finish options. The piano black is not something that I'm a big fan of, not just in this car, but in most of the cars. You will also notice black upholstery compared to what we've been showing you for the B-roll, and that is because the one that we've been showing you is the top spec trim. It's the luxury trim, so it gets leatherette upholstery, white in color. I personally like this one better. This one feels nicer, feels cooler as well. It goes with the sporty vibe of the cabin. The white one, like the name suggests, is more of a luxury oriented thing, but it gets soiled very easily. But the luxury trim also gets you a sunroof, which this doesn't. But anyway, coming back to the spec that we have on hand, you get a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment display. The software and the layout and the colors, they're all very similar to what we've seen in the Harrier. But the difference is, this one not only gets Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, it also gets connected technologies. It's got a dual SIM setup. There's a redundant SIM as well. You have network all the time. That's essentially the idea of having a dual SIM setup. We have not been able to really test out all the connected features yet because the functionality, the app, all of that will only be activated once the car goes on sale. Until then, we'll just have to live with this layout for now. You also get a big digital display in the instrumentation. It gives you a wealth of data. It gives you a nice cool animation about the battery charging and the battery powering the motors and all of that. It all looks nice. It also gives you a little bit of information from your Android Auto or your Apple CarPlay right on the top section of the instrumentation, so you don't have to take your eyes too far off the road. There's information available everywhere. So all of that is really nicely done. Like I said, I like the cabin, I like the colors. It's just the piano black finish that I do not like. But apart from that, this is a nice, fresh cabin to be in. The other good part, well, let me get into the back seat to show you that other good part. That though the liquid-cooled lithium-ion batteries sit in the floor, the seat height is exactly the same as the older Nexon. It hasn't gone up. It doesn't feel like you're sitting on a stool. It's exactly what it used to be, and that's a good thing. So you have a very good headroom. That's something that is a bit of a concern with other EVs because there's a huge battery stack in the floor, but with this one, it just feels as roomy as the earlier Nexon. Well, the startup of this car is just as you would expect, absolutely silent. The only thing that you hear is the fan, the air conditioning, and once you start rolling, it is the tires. So, since we began on the topic of noise, here the operation from the powertrain is very silent, of course, but like I said, there are quite a bit of road noise. Cars like these also use low resistance tires to improve the overall efficiency. So Tata has made modifications to the overall noise insulation of this car, and I think it's worked quite well. So on our way in, we did drive this car out on the highway, took it to speeds of about 100 kilometers an hour. Cruising at those speeds, you don't really hear much inside the cabin. Yes, there is a bit of the road and tire noise, but it's just as much as what you would get from a regular vehicle. Why it does not feel regular is because there is no powertrain sound. I think it's a nice and silent cabin to be in. That said, these are not purpose-built, low-resistance tires. The MRF Wanderers seen on our test car are all-terrain tires that claim to have lower rolling resistance than the convention, and therefore Tata says they are a good fit for this package. The other thing you may have noticed if you've taken a look at the spec sheet is the weight of this car. It's 1400 kilos, and that is because, well, battery packs are heavy. So most electric vehicles, that is the biggest problem for them, the battery pack. It does tend to push up the weight quite a bit. But frankly, 1400 is not so much that it feels heavy while driving it. It feels perfectly normal. If anything, it feels better because all those batteries are sitting in the floor. So like any other EV, the center of gravity is quite low. So compared to the regular Nexon, on the Nexon EV, the center of gravity is 40 millimeters lower. So around twisties like I'm driving right now, you don't really feel the weight because the weight is not being thrown around. The weight is all down low. If anything, it aids to the overall stability. It is only when you arrive at a speed breaker a little quicker than normal, you feel the weight in the car's belly. As far as the suspension setup goes, yes, to tackle all that additional weight, the suspension has been reworked, it has been retuned. Mechanically, it remains similar to the regular Nexon, but in terms of its tuning, it's a bit different. And what I feel in terms of the driving dynamics is, like I said, because of the low center of gravity, because of the weight being low down, the handling dynamics are quite good. However, when it comes to ride quality, we've always said that the Nexon has this nice, soft, supple ride. You will miss a bit of that with the Nexon EV. This one has a slightly firmer ride. Is that bone jarring? No. Is that something that I'll complain about? No. I will draw parallels with maybe European hatchbacks or European crossovers. It feels exactly like that. But yes, there is that firm edge, especially if you're driving on poor roads like I am right now. You will hear a little bit of that suspension noise. It's not really thudding or crashing through anything, but that firmness is felt and heard. Tata has also managed to achieve a 50-50 weight balance for this car. So front, back, left, right, there's a proper 50-50 weight balance is what Tata says. And well, I can't really argue with that. Like I said, even around twisties, the car handles quite well. It is quite confident when you're tackling bends, whether they're switchbacks, whether they're U-turns or fast bends. It tackles all of that quite nicely. The grip levels from these tires, despite these being low resistance, is quite good too. So in terms of its handling dynamics, there's nothing really to complain about. As far as the powertrain is concerned, the power delivery is nice and smooth. There are two modes to choose from. You have the drive mode or the S mode, S Sport, Second, whatever you might want to call it. It's essentially a little bit better in terms of its overall response. So what it does is, it gives you 60% additional boost in torque. Well, to put a few numbers to that, when you're driving in pure drive mode, you're not getting the entire 245 Newton meters of torque to play around with. You're doing between 160 to 170 Newton meters. And when you put it in sport mode, 60% of that is added as boost, and that is when you get the entire 245 Newton meters to play with. Whether you are in drive mode or in sport mode or the S mode, you're essentially getting that torque right from the word go like you get in any EV. It's just the amount of torque that makes a difference between these two. In sport mode, however, our test car showcased a fair bit of torque steer, and if you're not measured with the throttle, the car quickly goes into understeer. Tata says that they could have reduced and controlled the torque steer, but they decided to go with it to make this car feel fun and sprightly. Whether it does feel that or does it feel unnerving is something that only you can decide. Unfortunately, the mode selector switch does not have a park mode, and the moment you turn off the engine, the car goes back into neutral. So if you don't pull the handbrake, the car will simply roll off. While driving though, the powertrain has an automated hill hold function which will prevent the car from rolling back, but it does need a little getting used to. What also is different is the engine braking. So in drive mode, it feels very natural. In the S mode, it's a little bit sharper. It's not overtly sharp, but it's a little bit sharper. Also, unlike some of the other EVs, the regenerative braking cannot be adjusted. You do not have multiple levels, you don't have any paddle shifters to control that, you don't have any other switches to control that either. So Tata has, through their testing, found a right balance between how sharp it should be or how easy it should be, and that is what they've done. Maintaining a coasting speed is a little difficult because even the slightest, I won't even use the word dab, even the slightest touch to the throttle pedal makes the car build speed and accelerate, and going off immediately summons the regenerative braking and it starts cutting speed. So sometimes there's that on-off feeling, and it's pronounced when you're going downhill. Out on the highway or while going uphill, however, you don't get that on-off or that pulsating feel, but it's only while going downhill where maintaining a consistent speed can become a little tricky. Is it unnerving? Not so much. Is it pulsating, and can that get a little irritating? Maybe, especially if you have passengers who have motion sickness or who are battling motion sickness. Now the all-important question, kitna deti hai? You thought it would go away with EVs, right? It doesn't. In fact, it gets all the more important with EVs. Range is one of the biggest concerns, or the only big concern when it comes to EVs. Now Tata is claiming a range of 312 kilometers with this car. It's ARAI certified. They also tell us real world 240-250 kilometers on a full charge should be doable, and that's something that I want to eagerly test out with a road test. But for this first drive, I'm trying to replicate various scenarios to sort of get an idea of how the range is going to play out. So we started off on the highway early in the morning, not too much traffic, had quite an empty road. So truth be told, on the highway, even if you're at coasting speeds, highway range is always going to be lesser than city range, because this is where regenerative braking comes in. You're not doing high speeds, so that is why in the city you will always maximize the range. Whereas out on the highway, there's a lot of wind resistance to battle. You are moving at a higher speed, that is why more energy is being consumed from the batteries. So highway range is going to be lesser than a city range with most EVs. It's the exact opposite when it comes to internal combustion engines. So a lot of factors will affect how the range, or what is the kind of range you will get. Unlike an internal combustion engine, it's not purely about how measured you're with the throttle and how much traffic are you tackling daily. There are a lot of factors: the heat, the temperature levels, how often are you using all the peripherals like the air conditioning, the infotainment. All of that will take a toll on the energy supply that these batteries will give this car, and that will also take a toll then finally on the range. So like I said, we started off on the highway, we did a little bit of driving in the twisties with the drive and the sport modes, and now I'm entering the city. There is a fair bit of traffic as well. Now, like I said, with a road test, I'll be able to give you a more concrete figure on what the real world range is like. We'll have to live with the car for that. But right now, on this particular drive, we began this morning with about 92% charge in the batteries, showed a range of about 230 kilometers. I've driven about 48 kilometers right now, and on the onboard computers, I can see that the batteries are down to 40%. So that is a matter of worry. If that figure is to be believed, that essentially means that I'll get a range of hardly about 100 kilometers on a full charge, which is not good news. By the time we ended the drive, our Nexon EV tester managed to squeeze out about 113 kilometers with 11% battery still left to go. Compared to the recent EVs that have hit the market, like the Hyundai Kona and the MG ZS, the Nexon has a relatively smaller battery capacity of 30.2 kilowatt hours, and that explains why the range isn't as high as the other two. Recharging this battery would take anywhere between 28 to 30 units, which could cost anywhere between Rs 200 to 300 for a full charge. If you were to treat the Nexon EV purely as a city commuter, which you should, and squeeze out a range of around 150 kilometers, then you are looking at a daily running cost of around Rs 2 per kilometer, which is less than half of what you would pay for a Nexon petrol. At an expected price difference of about 4 to 5 lakh rupees between the petrol and the EV variants of the Nexon, you would need to run the Nexon EV a lot more than 1 lakh kilometers to recover the cost difference. But the guilt-free drive of an EV far outweighs the monetary difference, and the Nexon EV will enable that for a much larger audience with its accessible price tag. Now this is another thing I need to draw your attention to. I think we should stop considering EVs or drawing parallels with regular internal combustion cars when it comes to EVs. We need to start treating these cars as gadgets and not just pure automobiles. We are already used to charging our gadgets every day. And this vehicle or an EV is something that you need to add to that list. If you were to go with an electric vehicle, you need to get into the habit of charging the vehicle every day. If you're able to do that, and if you have a vehicle like this which has a decent range, then you will be used to the whole idea of charging every day, getting a certain distance, getting a certain range out of the batteries, and then coming back home to charge the batteries again. And in between, if you were to run out of batteries, then you'll have to look for charging stations. Now, we often say that infrastructure is still not ready and all of that, but a simple Google search will tell you that there are actually a lot of charging stations cropping up every now and then in all parts of the city. In fact, between my house and my office, there are already 19 charging stations, and that's a big number. It may be different for different cities, it may not be the same for smaller cities, but yes, it is improving. Things are changing. So once you put all these metrics into place and start doing the calculations on how much are you really going to drive every day, how much range do you really need on a monthly basis, and how many charging stations you have around you, you'll actually realize that EVs actually are starting to make sense even in a place like India. So once you do all these mathematics, once you do all these metrics and put them into place, you might be able to make a more informed buying decision on which EV to go for, whether to go for an EV or still stick to an internal combustion engine. If you ask me, I think the time for EVs is ready. Tata is offering an 8-year, 1.5 lakh kilometer warranty on the battery pack. On the topic of batteries, we drove the Nexon EV through 300 millimeters of water without any hiccups or cabin leaks. And Tata assures that it will handle the likes of Mumbai floods without any issue. This may only be the second electric vehicle to roll out from Tata Motors, but I'm genuinely impressed with the kind of effort that they've managed to pull through. If this is the sign of things to come, there's a lot to look forward to from Tata Motors in terms of electrification. But what is the most important bit is the price. The way the Nexon EV has been priced, I think it could be the game changer here. They have made electric vehicles a lot more accessible than what we've seen so far. This is also a long-range EV. Yes, we'll take that bit with a pinch of salt considering the kind of range that we've got with this particular vehicle. So if you're planning to buy one, definitely do wait for our road test so that we can give you a real-world figure on what to expect. Whether or not that comes out, definitely make sure that you test drive this car, live with it enough before you commit that kind of money. Also, like I said, do the math. EVs can actually be a lot more profitable in the long run compared to the ICE vehicles. And at least in terms of the Nexon, in terms of the sub-4-metre compact crossover genre, it could make a lot of sense. So definitely do that math. But like I said, for the price at which the Nexon EV has come out, I think it has the potential to be the game changer.